Is this thing on? It is now, actually. Have you ever wondered why we know so much about the science of death? Who was the first person to look at a dead body and be like, that's pretty cool. I need to know every single possible thing about this and how it got to be like this. Well, that's why I'm here. Warning, I have to do this. This video contains potentially graphic or disturbing content. Some of the topics I will be talking about in this video could be triggering or upsetting for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Hi there, I'm Danny. I'm online and I'm trapped inside of your phone. Please let me out. I'm stuck in here. This is my first time doing this, so I'm a little bit nervous, if you can't tell. I haven't made a video like this in a long time. Not used to this stuff, so bear with me, I'm trying my best, okay? I have a bachelor's degree in criminal investigations. It's hanging up on my wall right there. You can't see it though, but it is real and it is there, which is basically a combination of criminal justice, law, forensic science, all mashed together. Forensic science and the fields of science within it are something that I've always been super passionate about. So I've decided to make this series for people like me who love all things ghosts. I've always been super passionate about forensic science. So I decided to make this series for people who love all things gross and like crime and dead stuff. But from a scientific perspective, so this is going to be different than your classic true crime, talking about a case. I'm over it and it's like, it kind of, you feel like it's not something different. We need something different and I'm here to provide that. For legal purposes, the information presented in this video should not be taken as legal or medical advice and it does not equate to a formal education. It is for entertainment purposes only. All rights of sources are credited to their respective owners. Okay, let's get into it. Today I'm going to be telling you all about the history of forensic medicine and pathology. Who was the first person or a group of people to be like, yeah, this is what I'm into. This is what I want to learn about while looking at a decaying corpse? Who thinks that way? I do. We do. That's why you're here. First of all, I'm sure many of you know this, but in case you don't, forensic science is the application of science to law and legal matters. That's like the technical definition. It's not just used with murder or cases involving violence or death, but a whole range of different crimes. Forensic science is like a huge umbrella that covers many specific areas and topics relating to law and science. It covers all kinds of things from like forgery to like anything. With many things, forensic science and pathology started out with strong ties to religion and rituals. Many inscripted monuments and documents from ancient Egypt prove that Egyptians, as early as 3000 BC, had a wealth of anatomical and medical knowledge. Egyptians and Babylonians were known to conduct dissections of the dead, which gave them a considerable amount of knowledge of human anatomy. Obviously, when you're dissecting a dead body, you're going to have a lot of knowledge of anatomy. But this was extremely uncommon at the time. Not a lot of people were conducting anatomical investigations, dissecting bodies. Like, not a lot of people were doing that. Most of the other cultures that existed at the time did not conduct any sort of dissections for medical or legal purposes because of religious and social prejudices. These prejudices actually set them back centuries in terms of medicine, disease, and general understanding of the human body, which honestly you can clearly see when you look at history. The fact that bloodletting, trepanning, it's like when someone penetrates your skull to relieve pressure on your brain, like they drill a little hole to let fluids out, and lobotomies, which is different than the last thing I described, were considered serious and effective medical procedures at one time. And that really shows the long-term effects of these medical setbacks, of not doing these autopsies and researching how the body actually works and what it looks like on the inside and stuff like that. That's why you have these medical practices. I mean, there's a lot of other reasons too. A lot of it mixes in with religion and stuff like that, but you know what I'm talking about, okay? You get me. The first person believed to combine law and medicine was the personal physician of King Zoser of Egypt, Imhotep. Imhotep? Hold on. I don't want to mess this up. Hold on. Imhotep. So the first person believed to combine law and medicine was Imhotep. Imhotep was untrained in law and medicine, but was later worshipped as the god of medicine, so clearly he was doing something correctly. The association between law and science, or medico-legal associations, can be seen as early as 1400 BC, with the code of, hold on. Look, I did all this research a while ago. I wrote this a while ago, so forgot how to say all these things. I'm sorry. Hittites. Okay. The association between law and science, or medico-legal associations, can be seen as early as 1400 BC with the Code of Hittites. I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. I'm trying. There were also medico-legal associations within the Code of Hammurabi, which is considered to be the oldest written code of law. I'm sure you knew that, but that's still really cool. The earliest recorded murder trial took place in Sumeria in 1850 BC. Moving forward a bit in history to ancient Greece, everyone's favorite. Not everyone's favorite, but like if you're really into Percy Jackson, it's probably your favorite. Hippocrates was the first to really discuss forensic issues like the relative fatality of wounds. The Hippocratic Oath, which basically says that you swear to refrain from causing harm, you will only provide beneficial treatments to patients, be professional, and work within your area of expertise. If you need to know more, look it up. It's not my area of expertise. It's me following the Hippocratic Oath, I think, right? It's still used today. If you're in the medical field, you probably knew that. It was written in 400 BC. Crazy. In ancient Roman civilizations, the manner of death was usually determined by investigating the circumstances surrounding a person's death. For example, talking to people they knew or who they were with recently, what was going on with them, circumstantial evidence stuff. What were they doing on the last day they died? Stuff like that, you know? Okay, I'm back. But in 44 BC, when Julius Caesar was assassinated, a Roman physician named Antistius, I pronounced it bad, I'm sorry, was asked to examine Caesar's body to determine how he died. Antistius concluded that out of the 23 wounds on the body, the only fatal one was the one in Caesar's chest, which is totally possible, but I don't know if that's true because he was just looking externally, so it could have been any of the other 22 wounds all over the dude's body. Could be exsanguination. There's a million different reasons. You can't figure it out just by looking at the outside of a body. Okay, that's a theme. Sorry, spoilers. Over time, people started to get the idea that in order to determine how someone died, you should examine the actual body of the deceased, because obviously that's the best way to go about it, to actually look at the body, the evidence. Medico-legal autopsies were first performed in the city of Bologna. Bologna? In 1302. They were usually performed on homicide and suicide victims and people who were executed for their crimes. Crazy. One of the first documents that was made about autopsies was a Chinese book published in 1250 entitled Hiswan Lu, which translates to Instructions to Coroners. This book contained all kinds of important knowledge and crazy stuff that we still struggle with today. Such as different autopsy techniques, different injuries, how blunt force trauma looks different than sharp force trauma, even how to determine if an individual had drowned in water or was placed in water after death. if a burn victim was alive or already dead when they were burned. All these kinds of things, these are super, super impressive things to figure out, especially in 1250. That's insane. Like, if you don't know exactly what to look for, then you might not find it at all. You might not figure it out at all. Essentially, more and more countries and cultures and populations of people across the world are figuring out that examining the dead is super beneficial and important, and that knowledge needs to be preserved and shared. There's a lot of this sharing of information between different cultures at this time for a lot of different reasons. If you took a world history class, you get it. I don't need to go over that. You know, everyone's mingling. That's one way to call it. One way to, yeah. In the 17th century, two major textbooks regarding forensics were, I'm sorry for how I'm going to pronounce these, De Relationibus Medicorum by Fortunatus Fidelis and Questiones Medicolegales by Paulo Zacchaeus. These two men were like forensic influencers on Europe, super legendary guys. In Fidelis's work, the findings in drowned bodies that could help distinguish the differences between homicidal and accidental drownings were described, which is huge. In Zacchaeus' work, included was all sorts of information, such as characteristics of stab and bullet wounds, findings in asphyxial deaths, which, if you don't know, asphyxial means a lack of oxygen, like suffocating, for example. The differences between suicide and homicide, and whether or not an infant had been born alive or dead. That is a huge advance in medical legal science in Europe and across the world. These men were extremely influential, and Questiones Medicolegales earned Zacchaeus the title of the father of legal medicine. Forensic science was beginning to be taught at universities, specifically the University of Leipzig, by Professor Johann Michaelis. At this time, Germany had the most advanced court system within Europe, and it was routine for physicians to give their opinions about injuries and cause of death in criminal proceedings. This practice spread all across Europe. Physicians had a pretty limited role with actually investigating crime scenes, though. That was mostly left to the police, unfortunately. However, if a case was complicated enough, the physician would be able to come in and discuss crime scene evidence. Here's an example, all right? Here's a case for you. In 1699, a young girl named Sarah Stout was found dead, floating in a mill dam. A lawyer named Spencer Cowper was charged with the murder. I don't know all the fine details, but there was some sort of money situation going on between them. He made some investments for her and was going to make an interest payment on a mortgage. They were alone together, and then something happened, and now we have a dead body floating in the mill the next day. Doesn't look too good, you know? Hopefully I didn't do a ton of research on this case because it's not the main focus. This is just an example, but you get it. Money is a very strong motive for homicide. 6 weeks after she was buried, an autopsy was conducted on her body by a physician at the insistence of Sarah Stout's mother. So they do the autopsy and they find out that she was strangled to death and then thrown in the river. Interesting. At this time, and this part, You'll see. It was common belief that if a body was found floating in the water, it was proof that the person was dead upon being put in the water. So, they also had 2 sailors testify to support this claim by having them state on record that when a man was killed and thrown overboard, the body would float, and if someone was drowned, they would sink. So, a physician testified that actually, the floating and sinking thing doesn't matter, and all bodies sink in water, whether the person is alive or dead. So, that's your evidence. You know, times have changed. Now we know that dead bodies do tend to sink at first, but eventually rise due to the putrefaction process. I'll go more into depth with putrefaction in another episode because putrefaction is one of my favorite things to talk about. So interesting, I love it, chemistry, all that good stuff. But after a while, your body blows up kind of like a balloon. But after a while, your body blows up kind of like a balloon during decomposition, and balloons float. So there you go. And also my cat has a lot to say about this, it seems. As for the verdict in the Cowper case, they just kind of argued about if dead bodies floated or not, and then the defendants were acquitted. So he got away with it, even though it was like super obvious that he did this. But legally at the time, not guilty. They had enough evidence. Whatever, the justice system is stupid. That's why we study these things and work to do better and gain more knowledge. Moving forward, England created the office of the coroner, who was kind of like a bootlicking or crown licking. You need to leave! A sheriff type guy who would confiscate any money or personal belongings, people who died left behind, because at the time, everything was the property of the king. But yeah, this position, what it started off as, is like really not cool. That's not cool. Not cool. England. My cat agrees, if you can hear him. I did a lot of research on this, and honestly, it's pretty boring. They're just kind of corrupt, wealthy higher-ups who confirm the deaths and then steal all the deceased belongings on behalf of the king. Gross. That's really gross. Eventually, reforms were made to kind of keep them in line and investigate all deaths, because they were overlooking homicides by poisoning and child homicides, which is a big deal. Can't overlook those things, and doing absolutely nothing about them, which obviously really upset people. This was that crazy Sweeney Todd, there no laws in East London. No laws in East London. That era of time, you know what I'm saying? They just confirmed natural and unnatural deaths, were responsible for the investigations of those deaths, and decided if expert pathology opinions were needed. Basically, they got a slap on the wrist and got told to do their jobs. And they did the bare minimum. Are we surprised? No. This system transferred over to the States when the colonies happened, and the coroner system is still used today in a lot of counties across the States, which is really backwards and weird if you think about it. Why? But isn't that so authentically American of us? Those who are American? Yeah, just saying. Originally, in the colonies, autopsies were not allowed for religious reasons, okay? But eventually those restrictions were lifted because, one, autopsies provide valuable medical knowledge and help with the advancement of medicine, and two, turns out just looking at the outside of a body and trying to figure out how someone died isn't really effective. Does this sound familiar? Does this sound like knowledge that we figured out in like ancient Egypt, Babylon, a long time ago? We're just figuring this out in America. Okay, yeah. Okay. I mean, it wasn't America, it was the colonies. I'm sorry, forgive me. We can blame the crown for this. That's right. It's the British. It's their fault that we didn't know that. Anyways, over time, medical schools started popping up across the colonies, and they were studying a lot of anatomy because that's what you do at medical school. This went against a lot of people's religious beliefs. Womp womp. You need to leave. So naturally, a lot of these medical schools were often attacked by police and angry protesters because autopsies were against their beliefs. Naturally. This is America, baby. Well, it's the colonies, but the vibe is there. This is actually how the University of Maryland School of Medicine's first anatomy hall burned to the ground in 1807. Not surprising, honestly. I'm not saying it's a good thing, I'm just saying this is America. This is American history. With each generation of scientists, researchers, and professionals, forensic science continues to improve. Every day we're fine-tuning the process of applying science to law and being able to bring justice to victims of various crimes. Obviously, there's still a lot to learn, a long way to go. We are still learning. That's why I'm making this, so we can spread this knowledge and we can learn from it. There you have it. A very, very, very abridged version of the history of forensic science. When I was in school learning this, we spent multiple semesters going into the depths of history of all of these things, like a class for each of these things. Kind of. I lied a bit, I'm sorry. I tried my best to summarize it according to the points that were made to be most prevalent during my education.
forgive me if I messed up a little bit. But I did use an actual textbook and like sources that I gained during my time in college. Summa cum laude in action, baby. I hope you enjoyed. See you next time. Thank you for tolerating me. I hope you enjoy this. I worked really hard on this and I had to record it like 3 times because my camera kept dying. Alright, bye. Danny is offline. If you think I'm cool, can you see me? I can't tell. If you think I'm cool, please subscribe. Smash that like button. Follow me on social media. And tell me my makeup is cool, because this took me a really long time to do because, I don't know, I'm just struggling to do my makeup lately. But yeah, and don't look at my lace. Don't. Serious. Don't do it. Stop. Okay. Thank you for watching. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.